In the majority of portrayals, the Amazons are portrayed as a fearsome group of female warriors who separated themselves from males and lived in remote locations. It is a cultural practice that is carried out by a large number of people. When viewed from the perspective of Greek mythology, the Amazons are among the most fascinating and captivating figures that can be found from that perspective. Their narrative is made up of a beautiful tapestry of stories that are woven together across the entirety of the narrative. Among the features that are associated with these tales are the qualities of strength and independence, as well as the fight against the traditional gender norms that were prevalent in the ancient world. The general mythos of these stories is intricately entwined with these stories in a number of significant ways. The Amazons were said to have come from locations that were situated on the outside of the planet that was known to humanity. This was a widely held concept. It was common practice to identify these regions with locations that were situated in close proximity to the Crimean Sea when referring to these regions. Due to the fact that they were able to engage in warfare, the Amazons were portrayed as being brave and skilled in the art of fighting. This meant that women held the reins of control and reigned in roles that were considered to have been historically allotted for men. In the context of Greek culture, they were portrayed as a matriarchal society, which meant that women made up the majority of the population. It was generally understood that this meant that women were in charge of everything. According to the ancient Greeks, this reversal of gender standards was something that they found to be both interesting and disturbing at the same time. There were countless instances in which they portrayed the Amazons as a menace to their way of life, asserting that they pose a harm to their way of existence. These ancient Greeks were the first to recognize a change in the conventional gender norms that had been prevalent in their society up until that point. There are a lot of different mythology that depict the Amazons as being horseback warriors. This meant that they were expert fighters who were able to ride horses and engage in combat while bonded to them. They were also connected to the horses. A representation of the fact that they were able to ride horses was represented by this. These individuals were armed with bows and arrows, spears, and shields, and it was common knowledge that they held an amazing level of proficiency in the field of battle. Additionally, they were armed with shields. In addition to it, they were in possession of shields. In addition to that, they were protecting themselves with shields. As a result of their prowess in battle, a great number of ancient Greek authors and poets, such as Herodotus and Homer, recounted their achievements and exploits in war. This was done as a result of the fact that they possessed such a high level of combat expertise. As a result of this, they became a subject that was of significant interest in the domains of art and literature. It is Homer's Iliad, in which they are often portrayed as vicious opponents, that does an excellent job of highlighting the significance of their role in the battles that surrounded the Trojan War. Specifically, this is due to the fact that the author portrays them as vicious opponents. The Amazon stories were made more sophisticated by the mythology that surrounds them, which provided an additional degree of intricacy to the tales that they delivered. This created a more complicated level of complexity. Additionally, there were other instances in which these legends intermingled with the stories of well-known Greek heroes, which added to the complexity of the narrative. A duty that was assigned to Heracles, also known as Hercules, was to acquire the belt. This was one of the 12 labors that he was required to complete. Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons, was the one who was in possession of the belt until recently. Also known by the name Hercules, Heracles was also known by this name. It is for this reason that this particular interaction is considered to be one of the most well-known contacts that have ever taken place in the history of the globe. According to the tale, it is believed that Hippolyta was the one who first welcomed Heracles into the world. It is also said that Hera's interference drove him to become involved in a discussion, which ultimately resulted in a confrontation between Heracles and the Amazons. This is another version of the famous story. Both sides ultimately engaged in combat with one another. Hera's influence was ultimately responsible for producing the confrontation that took place. In addition to telling the reader about the survival of the Amazons, this narrative also offers insight on the nuanced interactions that occur between men and women in mythology. Penthesilea, who was a prominent character among the Amazons and played an important role in the history of the Trojan War, is another woman who needs to be recognized for her contributions to the history of the conflict. A key figure in the history of the conflict, she was also a significant figure. Her determination to exact vengeance for the death of her sister, Hippolyta, served as the impetus for her bravery on the battlefield, when she went to fight on the side of the Trojans. In the description, she is shown as a courageous and daring fighter who fought with an extraordinary amount of determination. The first time that Penthesilea and Achilles came face to face with one another was during a battle that would go down in history. This encounter would later become legendary, and it was during this battle that they met. A record of the conflict would be written in history. In order to stress the tragic yet powerful aspect of their encounter, one version of the story suggests that when Achilles defeated her, he was so humbled by her valor and beauty that he lamented her demise. This is done in order to emphasize the tragic yet powerful nature of their encounter. This action is used in order to emphasize the terrible yet powerful character of the experience that they had just had. This action is taken in order to demonstrate the tragic nature of their encounter, while simultaneously drawing attention to the forceful nature of the interaction. When depicted in Greek art, the Amazons were often depicted as self-assured and athletic women who posed a challenge to the conventional notions of femininity that were prominent at that time period. This was due to the fact that the Amazons were seen as a perfect representation of the Amazons. It was through these paintings that the dual nature of female strength in ancient civilization was brought to light. These paintings acted as both cautionary tales and sources of encouragement. There were both positive and bad messages contained within them. In addition to serving as sources of encouragement, they also acted as sources of caution, and they were utilized in both capacities. There was a fascination with the Amazons' projected potential to battle and their freedom because of the difference between the Amazons and Greek women of the time, who were mostly supposed to do domestic activities. This might be attributed to the fact that the Amazons were expected to fight. This occurred as a result of the Amazons having complete freedom to engage in any activity that they choose. This was due to the fact that at the time, Amazons were seen to have a higher level of authority than Greek women. Amazons have been depicted in a wide variety of different ways throughout the course of history, despite the fact that they have a reputation for being a species that is considered to be terrifying. Some newspapers characterize them as barbaric and uncivilized, while others lauded them for their noble and honorable actions toward other people. This contrasts with the portrayal of them in other publications. To put it another way, they received acclaim for the way in which they behaved toward other individuals. There were a few books that praise this manner of conduct, and you might find them. Specifically, this ambiguity applies to the manner in which women are intended to be considered in relation to authority, and it is a reflection of wider concerns that can be found throughout mythology. Amazons became early symbols of female empowerment and rebellion within the narratives of Greek society, which were dominated by men. This occurred almost quickly after the Amazons were first introduced. The ancient Greeks had a strong affinity for Amazons. It was possible for them to elicit sentiments of both fear and adoration at the same time. Despite the fact that they were portrayed as heroic individuals, the Amazons have left an indelible effect on modern society, providing as a source of inspiration for a broad variety of adaptations in the domains of literature, film, and art. This has occurred throughout the course of modern civilization. As a direct result of this, the Amazons have been an important source of information regarding cultural practice. By virtue of the fact that their experiences are relevant to modern problems of feminism and the challenge of gender norms, these women have become enduring characters in the research of women's roles in society. This is due to the fact that their experiences are relevant to the investigation. As a consequence of the fact that their experiences are remarkably comparable to present worries regarding feminism, this is the situation that you find yourself in. Future generations will continue to be inspired by the Amazons because they continue to serve as a representation of the power and complexity of women. The reason for this is that they have moved beyond their legendary roots, which is where they got their start. Due to the fact that they have progressed beyond their mythical beginnings, all of this is a result of their success. Thanks for watching and subscribing channel.